welcome to another edition of Nation Building. On our program, we examine the political, social, and moral issues in the leadership of the Bahamas. And on our program today, we have another exciting show for you. And we have a member of the opposition party here today, and we'll introduce him to you once we get back from this break.
The concierge service is the best thing ever. Like, it is so fabulous, especially for someone like me where I cannot leave my office, my job, to go do anything in the middle of the day because I'm on the radio. The service was so fabulous. The ladies gave me a call. They set up an appointment. They come with their professional looking attire. They're just so cute. And they come here, and it was a great experience. It took 20 minutes to switch over to the Alive service. It was simple. It was easy. And they just made me feel so welcomed. They explained everything. They hooked me up with my new phone. They gave me my data package. As you can see, hey. And it was fabulous. It was a wonderful service, but what I really liked best about it was not only did they come here and make it easy for me, but they continued to check up on me. The next day, they made sure that everything was working properly with the phone. I didn't have any issues. The following week, they contacted me again, and I've built a relationship with them. They've continued to check up on me. I feel like I'm part of the Alive family. It's amazing.
Hello, I'm Wendell Jones, and every time I sit down and I watch JCN television, I drink the Jamaica Bahama fruit juice. It's so pleasing to the palate.
I've been cooking Bahamian dishes for generations. I now use Jamaica Bahamas product. The rice is very fluffy, very tasty, and good eating. Jamaica Bahama product is simply the best.
As an insurance agent, my life is go, go, go. But whenever I need a refreshing break, it's Jamaica Bahamas Island Mixed Fruit Drink. Good.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bartlett from GEMS 105.9 FM. The effect that Island Junkanoo Juice Medley has on me is exhilarating.
Hello.
Did you get it?
Yes, baby. I got it.
Don't come home without it.
These arms of mine, they are yearning for wanting you.
Where is it?
Strongback is distributed by Jamaica Bahamas Import and is available at your favorite food or convenience store nationwide. For more information, call 341-4091 in Nassau and 351-8282 in Freeport.
Hello and welcome to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and I'm here today with a member of the Progressive Liberal Party, one of their young Turk, who's currently serving in the Senate. And so wish to introduce to you today Mr. Clay Sweeting. Senator Clay Sweeting, welcome to Nation Building, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts with us today. A lot going on in the country. And you being one of the young Turk in the Progressive Liberal Party. I'm hearing a lot these days about the role that young people play in or is playing in your organization, and so we'll have a lot to hear from you today about the happenings in our country and your take on everything, and to see, to what extent you approve or disapprove of what the government is doing to advance our country. You, in the last general election, you were a candidate for the PLP. You are a current senator. I wanted to, before we get into some of the current issues, just talk a little about your history. And so wanted to start, just for the benefit of our viewers who have never seen you on our program, to introduce them to clay sweeting, talk a little
Yes, sir.
about your upbringing. And so let's start off with your early days. Where did you go to school?
I went to school right in Spanish Wells. It was Spanish Wells All Age. Then it's now Samuel Guy Pinder All Age School. When I graduated, like a lot of the young men home, I went fishing. I was fortunate enough to purchase part of a fishing vessel, and we did commercial lobster fishing.
Okay.
And then I studied law online to, increase my education and because I'm always looking at something to venture into. I'm never someone just to sit down and relax, really. So, and then at the age of 23, I think it was, I participated in Youth in Parliament, and from there, I got involved in politics. One day you're a fisherman, next day you're running as a candidate.
Whoa. So you found, was that something you discovered in the process of participating in the Youth in Parliament, or was it a desire before that? Was it something that was just awakened by that
No, well,
experience?
I'm a nationalist, and I've always wanted to contribute to my community. So before that, I actually ran in the local government elections in Spanish Wells, and I was successful. I think I was 21 at the time. So, I've always wanted to contribute to my community and contribute to my country. I guess you could say it's just that some ducks fell in the row at that time, and I was able to run as a candidate. But I always believe in putting country above self and working hard to make this nation better for all Bahamians.
How successful were you in your fishing business?
Fishing initially was a business to get into. It's not a lot of young individuals that looked at education after they graduated because it was a successful venture at that time. So, a lot of the fishermen done well until the recession came in 2007, 2008. That's when a lot of the fishermen looked at different avenues of making money, because Spanish Wells is actually now becoming a tourist destination as well as a fishing community, because locals are having to find ways to increase the economy and to diversify instead of being a one-way economy on the island.
Okay. Now, in the early days, what is it? You said you've always been a nationalist. What is it that triggered you to want to participate in local government in the first instance?
It's very peculiar because sometimes there's nothing that really just triggers you. It's just sometimes you're drawn. So I've always worked hard in school. I worked hard. I always was a part of whatever extracurricular activities we had in school. So it might have been parenting. How my parents brought me up to become dedicated to whatever I venture into. But really, I just grown into being a nationalist. There's nothing specific that I could say that this caused me to do that.
So it's upbringing.
Yeah.
So moving along, how long were you involved in fishing?
Well, while I was in school, I used to fish in the August.
Summer breaks.
Yeah, summer breaks. We used to go fish. I used to fish with my father, or also went on fishing vessels because I carry young men to train them.
Right.
So I fished.
Primarily lobster fishing.
Yeah, mostly lobster fishing. Very little snapper, but primarily because lobster is the main industry there.
Right.
So I worked from 13 to 17, and then I commercially fished full time from when I was 17 until I ran in the first election. So I was 24, I think, when I started. So about 8 years full time.
Good. Okay. Now, jumping into the political side of things, you said that you participated in Youth in Parliament. It opened your eyes, I guess, to want to dive deeper into, because you always had a desire to serve your country. Why the PLP?
Well, the Progressive Liberal Party at that time was the opposition. And at that time...
And that was in what year again?
That was in 2010.
Right.
2010. So at that time, the fishermen of this country were struggling with poaching, with increased taxes, with really the fishermen felt neglected by the then government. My family has been predominantly PLPs from, my grandfather campaigned with Peter Bethel in the 80s. So I really grew into that in one respect, but also I was agitating for greater protection of the fishing banks, for the fishermen to become, I guess, the government to be concerned of the fishing industry on a whole, because the fishermen were suffering. The price of lobster was dropped. The price of going out to sea, the price of the cost of living was increasing. So, that is really what I started with, being agitating for the fishing industry. And, I was approached by the then opposition about possibly running in North Eleuthera as a candidate. So we met, and I guess the rest is history.
Good. You don't care to share any more details? This is totally up to you about why did they, what is it that they saw in you that stood out from anybody else in North Eleuthera?
Well, I mean, of course, there's a process that you meet with the leader and then you go to the candidates committee. But, I don't know. I think that they might have seen some drive in me. A young man who possibly could win the seat for North Eleuthera, could possibly capture some of the Free National Movement votes in that constituency.
So it was strategic in some regards.
Of course, politics is strategic, right? In order to win, you got to be strategic. At the same token, you got to do what's best for the Bahamian people and best for each community and constituency. But I think they was looking for young people, vibrant, to diversify the candidates during that election, and I just fell into place, I guess.
Okay, so you ran in 2012.
Yes, sir.
And in 2012 actually was the year when the Progressive Liberal Party enjoyed their sweep.
Yeah.
Of course, in 2017 they were swept out of office, but in 2012, why did you? I know your margin of the margin that you lost by was under 100.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yes, sir.
What is it you think was a major factor in you not enjoying the benefit of that wave at that time?
Well, North Eleuthera, of course, is a hard seat for any Progressive Liberal Party candidate to win. It's a lot of different things. Some people said I was too young. Some people said that, they never vote PLP. So it's a lot of different factors that caused me to lose that election, but nothing specific.
Because after all, it was a slim margin, and so I'm just wondering, with a wave and with it was a slim margin, what you'd have looked back and said, I could have done this different. Nothing in particular.
Well, no, I don't think I could have done anything different. Possibly if I would have been older, I'd have been more well known through the communities.
One would think that being a bright young man, progressive, would be a great attribute. You think the people in your constituency or in the country at large is still more comfortable with more older or more mature candidates, people making up their government?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, that constituency is a peculiar one, and some people, a lot of people there will vote for the now government FNM regardless of who's the candidate.
And it has had a history of doing so, a long history.
Yeah,
have the PLP ever won North Eleuthera?
In 82.
Right, well, not in recent memory. That was under the old Pinlin administration.
Yes,
so they lost in 87,
right,
all the way down.
All the way down.
It is then one of the most difficult seats to see. With that history, one would ask, why would you go back in 2017? And actually, this would have been the most unpopular time to be a candidate in North Eleuthera.
Well, I felt as if 5 years, leading from 2012 to 2017, that I worked hard, and I tried to do what I can for my constituents, even as I wasn't in the Senate because I was too young to be a senator at the time. So I just did what I could. I made a lot of trips to Nassau to speak on their behalf, speak to ministers, and just do what I can to increase employment opportunities in the constituency, even though I wasn't an MP at the time. The MP at the time, Theo Neely, me and him had a relationship where we could speak. Even though he beat me at the polls, it didn't hinder our conversation.
Did you have a personal relationship prior to that, Theo?
No, I didn't know.
But it was civil?
Yeah, civil. No, I didn't know Theo before that. But afterwards, you know, with discussions on things that needed to be done, you know, I'd try to keep him abreast, and he'd try to do the same.
That's interesting. And it points to a level of maturity that many in the country look for and is hoping for. Yeah. To see a losing candidate after losing the election not walking away but remaining engaged, and not just being engaged but engaging the member of parliament,
right,
and having a very good relationship to the point where you would have brought issues, you're saying, to him that needed to be done, and then in 2017. Let's talk a little more about the 2017 election. Of course, the Progressive Liberal Party ended up with only 4 seats. It was my words, devastating wipeout. Some say a tsunami. I guess that was self-explained. It's clear to see, based on the results, that the people rejected your party.
Right.
Did you see that coming prior to the election?
I don't think that the party itself seen, we realized it was a uphill battle. We realized that, you know, to hold the trust of the people coming into an election, I think nobody realized that we would lose as many seats as we did. But I think that we did realize that it wasn't going to be easy. And, you know, sometimes you have to just work hard, and you have to take a loss sometimes to reflect. And to see where you need to go from here.
Theo Neely was your opponent in the 2012 election. Right. In the 2017 election, you would have faced off against the now Member of Parliament for Eleuthera, and Theo would not been your opponent anymore. Right. Did you get along with the current Member of Parliament for North Eleuthera as a candidate?
Well,
or was it a hostile situation?
I mean, you know, I'm not really a hostile fella. If you review any of my speeches, I don't think you could find one where I targeted or took personal attacks on any candidate, because at the end of the day, politics is not about persons. It's about doing what you can for the country. So I know Ricky Mackey. I don't know him on the level that I know Theo to work in the relationship that we had. But I know him, and, you know, he's from Harbour Island, which was strategic as well, because Harbour Island is predominantly PLP. So they used that to capture a lot of the votes in that island. Okay.
We're going to take a break. You're watching Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and we'll be right back after this break.
I've been a customer for the past 2 years, and I will say the quality of the service is very good. During my trip to Andros, I was connected the entire trip, so that was really good. I was able to contact my family members and let them know how the trip was going. We touched land, we're here, so it was very good, and I really appreciate that. And also during times like when we had the storm, it was really good to have that service to reach out to our loved ones to make sure everyone is okay. And I really appreciate Alive for that. And even when there's a little technical difficulty, they always send out a little text message to let us know exactly what's going on. I'm happy to be alive, and I believe in best.
Hello, I'm Wendell Jones, and every time I sit down and I watch JCN television, I drink the Jamaica Bahama fruit juice. It's so pleasing to the palate.
I've been cooking Bahamian dishes for generations. I now use Jamaica Bahamas product. The rice is very fluffy, very tasty, and good eating. Jamaica Bahama product is simply the best.
As an insurance agent, my life is go, go, go. But whenever I need a refreshing break, it's Jamaica Bahamas Island Mixed Fruit Drink. Good.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bartlett from Gems 105.9 FM. The effect that Island Junkanoo Juice medley has on me is exhilarating.
Hello?
Did you get it?
Yes, baby. I got it.
Don't come home without it.
These arms of mine, they are yearning for wanting you.
Where is it?
Strongback is distributed by Jamaica Bahamas Import and is available at your favorite food or convenience store nationwide. For more information, call 341-4091 in Nassau and 351-8282 in Freeport.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and I'm here today having a very interesting conversation with Senator Clay Sweeting, who is the former candidate for the Progressive Liberal Party in the North Eleuthera constituency. Mr. Sweeting, we spent a little time talking about your history, talking about the elections 2012, 2017. Let's get down to where the Progressive Liberal Party is today. There's a lot of talk, certainly coming from your chairman and others in the organization, about the focus of the organization on young people. You represent the younger generation in the party. You're now in the Senate. I'm sure you weren't chosen by accident. I think your skill sets and your gift made way for you. You'd agree?
I'd hope so.
You'd hope so. Okay. And so let's examine some of what your party leader, Mr. Philip Brave Davis, saw when he chose you to be a senator to represent the party. There's a significant amount of criticism in the country, has been for some time, and especially since the leading up to the election, that there were major factors contributing to the Progressive Liberal Party's poor performance at the poll. One was, some say the nail was in the coffin when the party went against the people's wishes in the famous referendum, gaming referendum. Wanted to just have your thoughts on that particular issue as we continue along dealing with the issues that would have led to the Bahamian people rejecting the party last year.
Well, in regards to into gaming, you know, it was a referendum, and a lot of people voted against it nationwide. At the same token, gaming is the regularization of gaming. It's been an issue in this country for many years.
Right.
In the prior administration, before that, they had business license as cafes, so to speak. So when they regularized gaming, what it did was it was able for the government to have an avenue to receive taxes that they wasn't getting prior, because really it was an underground gaming throughout this whole country. I remember growing up home, people used to buy numbers on the streets for many years. I mean, probably as long as I can remember. So I don't know if that was a factor that caused the Progressive Liberal Party to lose the election.
You don't know?
I say, but what I do know, you know, I really don't want to speak to if that cost it all. What I do know is that we did lose. And it is a time for the Progressive Liberal Party to reflect and to rebrand itself. And at the same token, you look back and you say, well, did the referendum on gaming cause us to lose, or did other issues? Was it imposing VAT on the Bahamian people, or was it, it's a lot of factors that you could say. Of course, but I think at the end of the day, we lost the trust of the Bahamian people.
That is clear.
And I think that it is our role as members of the Progressive Liberal Party to regain that trust, whether it be introducing new candidates that are diverse, that are respectable, entrepreneurs.
But some would say you had that when you lost as well. I think the heart of the matter is not so much the fact that the party regularized gaming. The heart of the contention was that your party went to the people and asked whether or not they wanted something. And the principle is they said no. And then you decided to. And it brings me to the point of asking, what is your philosophy as it relates to issues such? Do you believe that governments ought to simply govern where they have the authority to govern, or should it consult the people? And then if you consult, are you not obliged to follow the will of the people?
Well, I think you need to have a balance, because at the end of the day, the people elected you to govern. So you have a responsibility to govern. And at the same token, you also, on certain matters or issues, consult the people. So, it's a give and take, really. And at that time, that was the Prime Minister's decision to have that referendum, and that was his decision to regularize gaming. I was neither in the cabinet or in the Senate or a member of Parliament. So that isn't for me to say. But what I will say is that it is important that as a government, once you're elected, that your job is to govern, but your job also is to ensure that you don't govern to a point that you hurt the economy or the people that you were elected to take care of.
Absolutely. So now, and I think what is important, at least this is what I'm aiming to do on behalf of the people of our country, is to get an understanding from young persons like yourselves who come forward and say, we're the new face of the new Progressive Liberal Party, or whatever you want to term it, to get them to understand what's your philosophy and what's your thoughts on issues, any number of issues. And so I hear you weren't there. You are in the Senate. It is a clear signal based on our country's history that any future Progressive Liberal Party government, if you're alive and well, you'll be a part of it.
Yes, sir.
And so this is an opportunity for our people to understand your thoughts, what to expect of you should you have the privilege of being able to serve, and how you see, as one of the younger people representing the young people in your party, what is your view on how a future government of the Bahamas ought to work at some point down the road? Is it that, because we have had clearly a history from both sides of some would say strong-handed government, others would say, in the case of Mr. Christie, I guess he didn't always live up to what he promised to do, or whatever the allegations are. The point is, philosophies drive these things. I suspect that a Hubert Ingram administration, if it was elected in 2012, based on Mr. Ingram's style of leadership, would not have gone to the people in a referendum if he wasn't sure that he could abide by what the referendum says. Because you can't assume that people are going to support an issue. We're going to come to VAT in a minute, but there are thorny issues out there, and the Bahamian people are very passionate, as you can see, and they have become animated on major issues, and they've discovered that they have real power, and they can boot these political parties in and out of office as they choose. And not only that, now they're demonstrating and doing all sorts of things to oppose issues that are brought forward that they don't like. So I really want you to speak to the people from that perspective as to what side is Clay Sweeting on. Is he one who believes more so in a consensus government, as Mr. Christie proclaimed he did, or are you more aligned with the kind of Hubert Ingram philosophy? And by the way, I'm not trying to label you Ingram or Christie. I'm just saying, which one of these philosophies do you more see yourself as a potential leader lining up with?
Well, like I said, I think it's a balance, right? As a leader, you are elected to lead. Some issues may be trivial, some issues may not. But at the same token, you don't want to bully some issues that might hurt the Bahamian people. Your job is to ensure that this country progresses, that the economy diversifies and becomes robust. So I understand what you're trying to say, Mr. Pinnock, in regards to, do you strong-arm government, or do you? I think it's a balance of both. I think it's a balance. You don't want to be too passive. You don't want to be too have these opinion polls, and then you still do what you want at the end of the day. You have to be careful that what you do is for the betterment of this country. So I think it's a balance. The same in regards to some people might say, let's have all young people in Parliament. I think it's a balance with that as well. So in anything in life, there must be a balance.
Talking about balance, what is your view as we look ahead at the elections, even though it's just under 4 years away? Would you like to see a greater portion of the candidates that the PLP put forward being persons of your age group, or do you believe that you should have mostly more mature or elder statespersons? Well,
I think this is a time, and you can see in this nation that young people have something to offer. A few weeks ago, you had Senator Joe Bath along with, I think, Mr. Griffin on the show, and just by watching that, I was proud, not as a member of the PLP, but as a young person in this country, to see their views on this and see how indulged they are to ensure that this country becomes the greatest country in the world. So I think you need some diversification. I would like to see more young people, of course, but at the same token, I think you need some older candidates or MPs that could help pave the way so that then when they are ready to, because you can see what's happening in Parliament now, it's a lot of young individuals who were elected, and it seems at times there may be chaos because it's like they don't know. One day VATs could be decreased, the next day VATs increased. There are a lot of promises that's broken, so you need...
Well, I don't know if that's fair, though. The government has taken a firm stand, I believe, about VAT. It's clear that they have proposed a 60% increase, and when we spoke with the representatives of Minister of Finance and those, they're clear about the fact that this is something that they're going to move ahead with, like it or not.
They're clear now, but they wasn't clear prior to 2017. You know, the Bahamian people never thought that 1 year into government that taxes would be increased.
And the government say, the Minister of Finance says, that your party left the country in such a horrible state that this was the only remedy to get rid of the debt that the country has and to move towards a balanced budget in 3 years. And that's the reason why they had to take this tough decision.
That might be what the minister says. And as ministers, you must respect them as ministers and as government officials. But at the same token, the government budget increased expenditure by $500 million. So will that extra 5.5%, will that cover that extra $500 million of expenditure?
4.5% increase.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or will that be used to pay down the debt?
Well, the minister clearly says that the proposed increase, he has committed that to the Bahamian people, and he is being emphatic about this, that the 4.5% increase from 7.5% to 12% is going to pay off the debt, mm-hmm. and provide a balanced budget for the country in 3 years. And so we only could hold him to it, and that's what he says. Yeah. But the point I'm making is simply in response to what you said, which is that, why the Bahamian people, certainly I understand based on the sentiments, they clearly didn't expect a mm-hmm. tax increase from the government, and I hear you arguing or hinting to the fact that the government opposed that in the first instance, and that's another argument. But clearly, you have to hold the minister and the government to what it says. It says that this is what it meant, and this is what it is doing in order to reduce the debt, to pay off the debt, and to provide a balanced budget. And so in a year, we can sit here again, Mr. Sweeting, and debate about whether they're on track to do that, and in 3 years, you can then judge them whether or not they were successful or not.
Well, I'm sure, maybe so, but you know, it's just important that this tax increase doesn't cause a already fragile economy to turn into recession, to have a recession again.
So you believe that is a real possibility?
No, well, I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for the future, but I'm just saying the government must be careful. Government must be careful that when you put extra taxes on the burden of the Bahamian people, that it doesn't cause a already fragile economy to turn into a recession. You know.
That is a concern that some share, for sure. Let me ask you then, kind of dived a little into the tax issue before we want to, and we'll do that, some more of that in the final segment. But as we wrap up this segment, just quickly wanted to ask, are you a part of the Progressive Liberal Party's reform, I don't remember the name they call it, I think it's some kind of constitutional reform committee for the party? Are you a part of that?
No, sir, no.
And any quick views that you have about that committee and its work? I think in August, in the summer.
Well, I think the committee is doing a good job. They've moved around the country and spoke to different branches in Abaco and Eleuthera and New Providence and Grand Bahama about the way to make our party more progressive. So I haven't been divulged a lot of information on all of what they intend to propose to the leader, to Honorable Brave Davis. But I'm sure that they're doing their work and they're supposed to propose a list of improvements to the Constitution, I think at the end of July. And then they'll be assessed. And
you will be a part of that filtering of information and deciphering of the way forward.
I'm sure.
You're watching Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hello, I'm Wendell Jones, and every time I sit down and I watch JCN television, I drink the Jamaica Bahama fruit juice. It's so pleasing to the palate.
I've been cooking Bahamian dishes for generations. I now use Jamaica Bahamas product. The rice is very fluffy, very tasty, and good eating. Jamaica Bahama product is simply the best.
As an insurance agent, my life is go, go, go. But whenever I need a refreshing break, it's Jamaica Bahamas Island Mixed Fruit Drink. Good.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bartlett from GEMS 105.9 FM. The effect that Island Junkanoo Juice medley has on me is exhilarating.
The concierge service is the best thing ever. Like, it is so fabulous, especially for someone like me where I cannot leave my office, my job to go do anything in the middle of the day because I'm on the radio. The service was so fabulous. The ladies gave me a call. They set up an appointment. They come with their professional looking attire. They're just so cute. And they come here and it was a great experience. It took 20 minutes to switch over to the Alive service. It was simple. It was easy. And they just made me feel so welcomed. They explained everything. They hooked me up with my new phone. They gave me my data package. As you can see, hey. And it was fabulous. It was a wonderful service, but what I really liked best about it was not only did they come here and make it easy for me, but they continued to check up on me. The next day, they made sure that everything was working properly with the phone. I didn't have any issues. The following week, they contacted me again, and I've built a relationship with them. They've continued to check up on me. I feel like I'm part of the Alive family. It's amazing.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock. Today we are here having a conversation with Mr. Clay Sweeting, Senator Clay Sweeting, who's the PLP, the former candidate for North Eleuthera. Mr. Sweeting, want to talk a little more about the 2018-2019 budget, and also to talk about a little more about, not sure if we've gotten enough of your views as a young PLP about the things the party needs to do in retooling itself. In fact, I'll start off there before we finish with some of the budget issues. The current state of the Progressive Liberal Party, we talked about the fact that you have a conclave coming up to deal with internal constitutional party issues. Some say that the Progressive Liberal Party is, I said when I met with your deputy chairman, an interview that played recently, I said to him that it is similar to the mafia, some say, in terms of, and he said, well, both political parties have a similar operation, but the Progressive Liberal Party has been criticized heavily for having endless stalwart councillors. It has been alleged over the years that party leaders have loaded the party stalwart councillor base in order to secure the leadership, their position, and those that they handpick to lead. That certainly is not democracy. It's not. It's internal. It's your party's business, but as one of the major political organizations in the country, those type of practices and those methods seem to suggest that there is an internal culture that is not very democratic. What say you?
Well, the issue, I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with the Deputy Leader that both parties have it. But I think that the issue with the stalwart council is that you have to be 55 to be a stalwart councillor. So you could have served the party for 20 years, and you still don't have voting rights as a delegate. So say if you start when you're 20, right? You're 40 years old, you still don't have, unless you're on a branch. But you could start serving the party at 50, and it could be the leader's decision to make you a stalwart councillor at 55. So I think those are some of the issues that the Constitutional Reform Committee will put forth to help balance and to really reward some of these younger people that's been dedicated to the party and been in the trenches and campaigned till all hours of the night, to be given that eliteness, I guess, if you could say, in the party. To have
but aren't you afraid that what you will simply have is an environment where a leader can handpick people who are supportive to him and ensure that his position is secure, as opposed to what we would consider a democratic party machine would be something similar. And America isn't perfect, I mean, don't get me wrong when I say this, but when you look at the electoral system that happened with the electoral system in the US, but what happened recently, many people point to the current president of the US and say, oh, that proves that the system doesn't work. And I say, no, it proves that it does. The reality is that people in every district in America went to the polls in a primary, selected a candidate that they wanted to lead their party. And they didn't need to be in a branch and be all they had to do is, as a citizen of the country, you couldn't be registered in both parties. You had to be either Democrat or Republican. And so as a registered Democrat or a registered, in the case of Trump, a registered Republican, they went out and they had a right in a primary to choose. And so all across the United States, people turned out in these primaries and chose their candidate, and Donald Trump won most of those primaries and was then selected by, and so even people in the upper echelon of the political organization itself that didn't want him end up saying, look, the people have spoken, and so this is our man. We don't have that system here, and the PLP certainly don't practice that kind of. So my question to you is, are you in favor of more of that type of a democracy, or you prefer to keep the current practice that we've had?
Well, I think that's a good point, and it's something that they should really look at. My concern would be with that you would have a lot of, it would be some type of process to be registered as a PLP, because you might have members on the opposite side, register to vote. So it would have to be done properly.
Sure, and I hear you, but just to assure you that if you copy a similar system, the truth is, if a Free National Movement member decides they wanted to go into the PLP, they'll lose the right to then choose their leader. So nobody wants to give up. See, because you only can vote in one. So if I decide to register as a PLP for a primary. Once I register as a PLP, I can't then register as an FNM. And so, no, I accept that there are drawbacks to any system. But I'm simply saying it doesn't have to be that. All I'm saying is, on behalf of so many people who have said this, is that there is certainly the impression on a lot of people's mind that there isn't that type of democratic process internally. In fact, I'll use an example. I suspect that former Prime Minister Christie would have had at least a much greater challenge retaining his position of party leader against when Alfred Sayers ran against him, had the party had a more open system. Would you agree?
I wouldn't agree to that, but I'll speak back to what you said initially about nationwide, about PLPs registering nationwide too. I think what the advantage to that would be that you'd have a national consensus, because what you feel here in Nassau, the people in Eleuthera might feel different, because the economies might be different, and you have a factory different. So what that would do, and that would possibly give you, the party, a better chance at the general election, because nationwide you would have voters, not just in branches and picked for convention votes and things of that sort. They would in turn vote their conscience nationwide, and then that would give the party a better chance at winning the general election, because you'd have a consensus. Because
what people are thinking, and absolutely, and that's an added bonus point. Should voters in the country consider Clay Sweeting a reformer or more of supportive of the parliamentary democracy that we have practiced and the systems that go along with it? Are you more a reformer that wants to see significant change to our country's constitution, or are you someone that is pretty much more than likely happy with what exists?
Well, I think it's I think as countries grow, reform always needs to come, because the times we're living in now are not the times we were living in 30 years ago. So as a country progresses, I think change must come. Changes might not always be good, but change will happen whether we like it or not.
And so you want to move with it?
Yeah, I think that we need some reform in regards to the Constitution in different areas.
Anything that stands out?
Well, for example, what we had a couple of years ago in regards to the Constitution reform in regards to women having babies and not having citizenship and things of that sort.
Do you think that, now that you've brought that up, do you think that these things that are progressive ideas and things that needs to be done are getting lost and buried in people's emotions at a particular
politics,
time?
Yes, definitely.
And so if that is the case, then it speaks to the need for even greater reform that will, if you will, people will always have their favorite political parties. But for example, some has put forward that we should look at voting, having a republic where the leader of the country is voted in separately, right? And there's arguments for and against that. One of the benefits of that is you don't get a situation where people are forced to get rid of everybody when they may have a problem with the leader of the country, because he stands to be elected by himself. So for example, if you had a party leader, your leader, current leader, Brave Davis, and the government, the Prime Minister, Mr. Minnis, Dr. Minnis, if there was an election, for example, to choose between them, people can still decide that, okay, I want Clay Sweeting, but I don't want the leader of the PLP, Brave Davis. And so that kind of, would that work in our country, do you think?
I don't think our country is ready for it. Because,
Why not?
Because we are a party based voting country. I mean, even if you look at the referendum that former Prime Minister Ingram had, he had that a year or so prior before he lost. People voted emotionally, not that they voted.
But is it benefiting the country, Senator Sweeting?
No, well, that's what I'm trying to say. No, I don't think it's benefit. The problem is, how do we change that? Do we change it by education? You know, the issue with this country is that we are so deep in our politics. Our politics become a part of us.
Our party.
Yeah, yeah.
So as a young politician, what are you prepared to do when given the opportunity? You're in the Senate, you have a voice. What are you prepared to do to help move the country along to a greater place of maturity to deal with these issues so that there can be progress?
Well, like I said before, you know, I'm a nationalist, and one thing I can say about our leader is that he has never imposed his beliefs or thoughts on any legislation on us as senators. So when we prepare a contribution, we prepare how we feel in our thoughts.
You mean you don't have to bring your speeches to be edited or looked at by your party leader?
No, they probably don't have the time for that, really. But you know what I'm saying is that speaks volumes to his leadership, and you know I just thank him for giving me this opportunity as a young man. I was 31 when I was appointed to the Senate. So I get...
You're one of the youngest senators.
I am the youngest, yeah.
Well, to ever be appointed. I think
second,
there were...
Christie was the youngest.
Okay, there were a few...
Barry Christie was the youngest, and then I think I might be the second.
Okay.
But you know, that's never here or there. But what I'm trying to say
is... Well,
it
does speak volume to the confidence that a party leader has, and it's good for your generation, of course.
Yeah. So I mean, we get to speak on our issues because how I view things might be different than someone who's 60 views things. You know, I operate my business off a phone. Someone who's an older generation needs to be in his office, working every day from 8 to 5. So it's just culture changes and times change, and sometimes we have to move along with the times.
Working, you mentioned that as a senator, you do get to flesh out your own thoughts, to contribute to the party, to the debates that goes on, and you're not shackled in any way, and that's good to know. Is there, as you look ahead, though again some ways off, have you made up your mind that as a nationalist and as a PLP that you want to have given the opportunity to run again?
I think, you know, I live day by day. That's 4 years out. So I mean, I will do what I can now, and I will continue to work as I've always worked. And if the opportunity arises, and the candidates committee has to elect you to run.
Select you to run.
Yeah, so it has to go through a process. But at the end of the day, if I can make a contribution and, you know, the people want me to run, you know, it's timing. Time is, you know, one day you could be popular and the next day you could be unpopular. So you just have, everything's about timing, and, you know, of course you got to ensure that your family supports you, because it's not just my decision. You know, I have a wife, I have a child, so you got to ensure that your family supports you as you move forward in whatever endeavor, whether it's politics, business.
What about your spiritual life?
I'm a Christian by faith. I go to the People's Church, Spanish Wells, so it's non-denominational.
Right, but the people of the country like to know this is a Christian country, a Christian nation. Is that something that the people in North Eleuthera and the Bahamas can count on, Clay Sweeting, if ever legislation come before you that would that may create some discomfort for the Christian community? You know, I mean, not to be extreme, but an issue such as gay marriage or something else, any other extremes that people in the country may not be comfortable with, can they count on you from your Christian background to say always be consistent with the Christian faith?
Yeah, I'm pretty, but I mean, being a Christian is a part of you. The same as politics is a part of you. So, of course, my Christian faith would play a pivotal role in any decision I made or supported in future if given
what about when that collides with the party's leadership? For example, let's use an issue like marijuana, any dicey issue. I'm not picking on any particular issue. But if an issue comes up that the faith-based community struggle with, not comfortable with, clearly crosses the line in terms of what biblical teaching is, and the party happens to take a position that is not consistent or supportive of the church, what happens then?
Well, I think that's what's great about our current leader, is that, like I say, he doesn't impose really his belief on you. He might give his views, but at the end of the day, I have to live with my decision. I could be in, I told the branch in North Eleuthera, you know, I ran here twice. Next election, you might have a different candidate. So they have to carry on after I leave. So even after I leave the politics, I still have to live with the decisions that I've made. Will it affect me as a citizen? Will it affect my child, who's now 2 years old? Will it affect how his life, you know, is reared as he grows? So I think it's important that as a Christian and having faith, that you make decisions based on Christian values, at the same time ensuring it's best for the country.
Wonderful. As we wrap up, the budget, what is fundamentally your objection with the budget as proposed by the government?
Well, of course, I think the number of the day is 12%, 12% VAT. 12% will be the single, will cost the single highest cost of living in the Bahamas to this day. That's one issue. The next issue is that it's being imposed on the business community with little or no warning. I don't think that the business community can be ready for July 1st, especially, for example, the grocery stores. They have to change some
prices.
Well, not just prices, but for example, the grocery store in Spanish Wells Food Fest, or pharmacy. They got to change some of that stuff to VAT exempt. Then they have bread basket items that they have to change. Will they have to hire more staff to cover the cost to get this done? Will they have to implement a new system to be able to handle the difference in taxation in the store? So I think that this VAT increase doesn't just hurt the poor people in this country, who will be a bigger tax burden on them. It will also hurt the business community, because I don't think they can be ready in 2 weeks.
And so your advice to the government would have been, in retrospect, would have been what should have been done?
I think they should have left it at 7.5. And if they wanted to increase VAT, first off, they should have consulted with the business community, because I think even some MPs Member of Parliament didn't realize, you know, if you watch the House, some of them was even shocked. So I think they should have assessed the budget. And of course, governments want to decrease deficit. They need to pay the bills. But you cannot do that by putting the tax burden on the Bahamian people. You cannot tax a country out of debt, because people will cut back on spending. As a business person, I will have to cut back on spending.
And the government would say, how else can we pay off this deficit and bring a balanced budget?
Well, I remember prior to election, they said that the government stole the VAT money. And just in theory, if the government stole the VAT money, I'm just saying, just in theory, if the government stole the VAT money, and now they're in office, the VAT money must be there to pay the bills. But in all seriousness, you know, as being in economics, you must assess the full picture, right? You want to pay bills, but will this hurt the people that you are elected to govern? So they must assess the situation and see and ensure that they doesn't cause economic collapse. You don't cause people to not have jobs anymore. Will businesses cut back on staffing? You know, it's a lot of things that they must incorporate.
We've completely run out of time, and I see that we'll have to do this another time, but as a young Progressive Liberal Party candidate, I think you represented yourself well, and we're grateful for the opportunity to have you here to share your thoughts with us. On behalf of all of us here at Nation Building, I want to thank you once again for tuning in this week to our broadcast, and stay tuned for the next edition right here on Nation Building, and as always, have a great week.
All clear.